Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of Barry. A great season finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Okay, so first and foremost, I love that Barry's in the hospital, and obviously he's dreaming about, what he was in that sequence last episode where he saw all the people that he killed, and then at the very, very back of the pack, he sees Jean and Sally, the people that are the most important to him. Then it's like, oh man, are they going to die because of my actions, or am I going to be responsible for killing them? What does that mean? And because of the episode, I think you can interpret that vision a little bit differently, or maybe you could say their stories are going to end up this way because of me, regardless of the situation, whether it's I'm going to be directly or indirectly responsible for killing them or ruining their lives. Because when Barry leaves the prison, he ends up going home, and Sally's there waiting for him. It's like, okay, cool. You know that thing you were telling me you're going to do for me for Diana? I need you to do that to Natalie now. It's which is kind of crazy because I'm I love that Barry didn't even say didn't go no, Natalie's one of our friends or something. We went to acting class with her. It's no, it's just more so than anything. And that's a sad thing that Sally's yeah, the thing that I was freaked out before about oh my God, Barry, get the hell out of here. You're saying something crazy like that. Yeah, I want you to do it now because I'm super pissed. Because for her, she blames Natalie for everything. She even lost Lindsay as an agent, to be fair. That was of her own making. But for her, it's someone had said it last episode. They're someone had commented they hate Sally, but what Natalie did was fucked up. It's yeah, but she doesn't deserve the tirade she went. Because I think maybe that's my own misconception. I feel that's common enough place. I don't know if Natalie necessarily snatched it from her, or maybe she did, but I also feel it's probably a thing of, I could always see a Hollywood executive being oh, let's take this thing, get someone else associated with it. Well, to be fair, Sally was still there, so I'm she wasn't canceled quite yet. So I'm yeah, I think it must have been Natalie who decided to hijack it. Because just like Sally was trying to make a name for herself, Natalie was always kind of second fiddle to someone else's rise. So it's right, let me be the star this time. Let me raise my star up a little bit, you know? Not saying it's okay, but I can see where Natalie's coming from, why she did what she did. But obviously Sally exploding under her like that last episode didn't work out. But now, once again, the fact is that Sally's willing to go this far now speaks volumes. But Barry's no, I'm not going to do this because he's I know where I'm going to end up after. She's yeah, I know, Natalie's house. We just talked about it. And it's yeah, it even says oh, take a picture of her while she's sleeping and we'll send her something. But they're you know what? I'll write the message, because I'm curious what Sally would have written if given the opportunity. But Barry's I know I'm going to hell for all the terrible things I've done, but I don't want to drag you down with me. So I think that's how he interpret that. And right, these are people who are going to, either way, you're going to suffer the ramifications of my choices. So he didn't want Sally to do that. But then Home Dude, who's part of that, the motocross group, he ends up attacking, knocking Barry out and just starts choking Sally. I was scared for her. I was okay, Barry's going to get up and save her, right? And then she looks and sees Barry still not. I was he's not going to get up. I was no way. You're not going to kill Sally. I was oh my God, they're going to kill Sally. I legitimately, because, and I think they designed it that way because it's right, you think in the end it's going to be that thing of cool, Barry's going to step in at the last second and save her. That's what you would think would happen. And in that moment, and it's getting closer and closer to her passing out and dying. I'm holy shit, Sally's about to die. Luckily, she stabs on. I'm oh shit. And then the guy runs away because he's what'd you do to me, you bitch? And it's the knife went through his neck and it's up to his eye. You're ugh. The fact is, he took that opportunity to check that out. And it shows you how meat-headed him and the others kind of are. But because they didn't really think about all the stuff they were doing in public in episode 6. They didn't really think about the consequence. They were just so oh, let's do this super in public, surrounded by a whole bunch of witnesses. Sure, let's do this. That was kind of, they're not the smartest. So, and then Sally picked up a bat and proceeded to beat the ever-living shit out of him. Went full-blown Negan. I use that every time a bat is involved. That is now in the pop zeitgeist for me, because I never read the comics, so I didn't know about the whole Lucille thing. But because of The Walking Dead, that's every time I've ever seen someone get bashed with a bat, I immediately go, oh my God, they're going, who's ever doing the bashing? I'm oh God, they went full-blown Negan. That will always be my antidote to someone using a bat. It's yeah, you're going Negan. So Sally beating the shit out of the guy, and Barry stopping her. It's like, right, you didn't do this. This was me. She's like, no, she's like, I did. He's like, no. Say that I did. Say that Barry did it. Barry did. She's like, Barry did. He's like, good. Now go home. You were never here. Because Barry blames himself. He sees that none of this would have happened if he had never gotten to their lives. He's the one that set the dominoes going, like, in this regard. Like, if he had never gotten into their lives, Fuchs would have never, things would have never played out to the point Fuchs would be sending people after Barry. So it's one thing after another. And someone had commented last episode, because I said, like, oh man, Barry's fucked up. And the person's like, no, Barry's not fucked up. It's that basically he's a little mentally unhinged. And then you add on top of the fact is he has someone like Fuchs pointing him in the right direction, which I totally understand where that person's coming from. And they're right to some degree. And I can accept that. But I still think Barry's fucked up in the regard that I said it too, like, both him and Sally are trying to fill voids inside of themselves. And Barry, that darkness in him existed before Fuchs, like, came into his life. Like, obviously with everything with Albert, we've seen that darkness in Barry. Same darkness he used to literally mow down everyone in the season 2 finale. But it's just that Fuchs found a way to point that darkness and that anger in a different direction. Yes. He added gasoline to the fire that was already there, but the fire was already there. That's kind of my point. But, I think, like, both that person's point of view and mine can coexist, is kind of what I'm saying. So, it is Barry trying to do the right thing. Because in his own effed up way, he does try to do the right thing. It's just, he just is so not there that he doesn't even realize, like, once again, his attempt to try, because he loves Gene. It's like, I love you, Mr. Cousineau. And he's like, I want you to love me back. Same thing for Sally. Like, oh, I love her. I'm trying to do everything right by her. And that he doesn't realize, he realizes some of the wrong he does, but he doesn't realize how fucked up he is in other regards. So he's trying to make it up to Sally because he knows that he brought this all into her life. So Barry ends up disposing of the body, and Albert rolls up on him. It's like, okay, how much you get paid for that, Barry? How much did you get paid to kill Chris? And that's the thing too. And he can't even bring himself to say it, because if he said it, he'd have to admit, I didn't get paid to kill Chris. I killed Chris because we were a part of something, and Chris wanted to, like, confess to everything we were a part of, and I had to kill him. Once again, I love that Fuchs is like, yeah, like, that was all on Barry. It's like you weren't the one pushing Barry to do it. Yes, in the end, Barry still did it on his own, but I love how Fuchs is trying to throw Barry under the bus, being the piece of shit that he is. But I love that they're like, right, we know that you work with the Chechens and stuff like that. We know you're the Raven and stuff. And so when, like, Fuchs is getting, like, sent to jail and stuff, they're like, oh, Mr. Fuchs, and he's like, the Raven. And she's like, what? He's like, I'm the Raven. So I'm like, I think I could see where things are going to go potentially next season with that, but we'll talk about that when we get to the end of the episode. But because Albert wanted an explanation, no explanation Barry gave would ever justify, and even in that, because that's the thing, that Barry's done a lot of bad stuff. That one stuck with him. It's like, right, you were a fellow Marine. You were someone I called a friend. I left your wife a widow. I left your child fatherless. Yes, so, like, it is probably in his mind, the most egregious thing he's ever done. That's why out of anyone last episode, he looked and saw Chris and waved to him, because Chris is the one that he feels the worst about. It's the one at least he took notice of the most in that regard. In that little in-between life and death situation, that little limbo space, if you will, that he was in last episode and a little bit at the beginning of this episode. And I was curious to see what Albert was going to do, but Albert, like, seeing how broken up Barry was about everything and sobbing, it's like, right, you're not a complete and utter sociopath, even though, yes, he is. But he's like, you're not, I know evil, Barry, and you're not evil, but this has to stop. Because it's like, if you didn't save if it weren't for you, my 8-year-old daughter wouldn't be around, and she's around because you saved my life. So because of that, I'm going to spare you this one time, Barry, but this has to end here. Just stop it all here. And I don't know if Barry had tried, I don't know. Because Barry was in this complicated situation because Gene got called up by Jim. Jim confronts him and it's like, did you love my daughter? And it's like, no, my daughter, Janice Moss, Detective Janice Moss, did you love her? It's like, yes. Did Barry Berkman love her? And, like, breaking him down because, we went through the whole thing of knowing he's very good at interrogating people. So he ends up breaking Gene, and Gene's like, right, he knows everything, and Jim wants you to come over now. It's like, no. And Gene having the gun in his eye, I was like, oh my God. I'm like, is this what we're going to do? That's what it is. Like, Barry inadvertently dooms everyone. So when he gets there and Gene's like, no, you can't go and you can't talk to him. I was thinking like Gene was trying to stop Barry, sure, but I thought he was like, I thought when Barry went in that house, he's going to find out Gene already did it. And so when Barry's about to kill Jim, cops roll out. It was a trap. And I'm sure like all Gene's acting, because for him it's like, right, Barry said he would leave him alone, but it's like, right, this guy has to go because he killed the woman I love, but also he threatened me, my son, my grandson. It's like, no, like this guy can't be allowed to continue. So, because that's why I did believe what Gene said of like, oh, like this guy's threatening everything that I've built for myself. Once again, how Sally and Gene got corrupted by Barry, but in the end, Gene did the right thing. Once again, it's that thing of like, when I said it time and time again, I side with the bad guy. I want him to get away. Whether it's Walter White, the Marty and Wendy Bird, Raymond Reddington, Light Yagami, I'm always like, I kind of want you to get away with everything. So, but yeah, this ends with Barry getting arrested. There was no way out of that. So Gene sets you up, and Gene looks content. It doesn't look like I'm heartbroken I have to do this, which is going to be interesting because the thing he's going to be working on is the thing they had initially planned was like, okay, we're going to put on this thing and it's going to involve your students that you all taught. I was like, eventually that would have involved Barry too, so that would have been an awkward interaction. But instead they're doing Annie's thing. Is that her character's name? I'm already blinking on it. Laura's character's name. I want to say it's Annie. They're doing her thing instead, and like this player or something that she had written. So they're doing that, and in the end, Jim and Gene just go their separate ways, and they just like hang on Jim for a while, which is so interesting too because I'm curious to see what Albert does with this. Now that Barry has been arrested, it's like, right, it's attempted murder. None of it ties Barry. Well, because it's Gene's confession, and Gene already changed his confession so many times. He said it was Barry, and then he said it was the Raven, and now you're going to say it was Barry. Like, that could be something a defense lawyer could probably potentially tear apart, because there's no physical evidence to tie Barry to Janice's death necessarily. It's still the whole thing of, right, you attempted to kill him. Like, I'm curious to see. It's going to be interesting to see who his lawyer is. I wonder, is it going to be someone very specifically cast as his lawyer? What the defense is going to be in that. Because like I said, I don't think there's anything 100% guaranteed. There is a confession, but it's nothing that's been recorded that would say like, oh, Barry did this. I'm curious to see what Sally's going to do, because it's like, right, she murdered a guy, and then she finds out like, oh my God, Barry's this well-known hitman. Like, how much of that information is going to become public? How she's going to feel about it is going to be interesting. Now that she has killed someone, what is that going to do to her? Like, she'll probably, like, the trauma of it all will eventually circle back, and she'll probably will, like, rewrite it in her head of, like, yeah, it was Barry. Just like Gene used his acting in this regard, maybe Sally would do the same thing to convince herself it really was Barry. But that's what Barry would want anyway. He'd want her to not take the fall for this, because, once again, for him, it's like, I'm to blame for everything. So, but aside from all of this, there's also the situation with Hank. I didn't realize it was two guys, his two dudes, and that sail across from him. I thought it was just one of them, and oh my God, they must have brought like a tiger or something in there, and I was like, that's horrendous. One of the guards throws up, but the other one's like laughing maniacally. You're like, Jesus Christ, while it's still eating and crunching on him. I'm like, dude, that's so fucked up. I was like, oh, that is one of the worst ways to go. Holy shit. And then you had Hank, like, you know, the lion or whatever was busting through, or tiger or lion, whatever, ends up trying to break through the wall, and I was like, come on, Hank, and he breaks free. The guard comes in, he takes the guard's gun and mows down in that room, which legitimately, hearing how wounded it was, hearing it like kind of gasping and almost like gargling on its own blood, you're like, oh, you actually feel bad for it. I mean, because truth be told is, it was sitting there to murder them, and it would have killed Hank. So yes, I want Hank to survive, but you still feel bad for it, you know? I still felt bad for the guy. It's like, right, it was just going by instinct. It was put in a room and, oh, here's prey. Let me rip them apart, you know? Hank got out, went into the other room and found Elena. I can only assume conversion therapy because I didn't know she was trying to get home due to, she was trying to get Cristobal to see, like, try to find out whether or not he really was gay or at the very least bi, or not. But I think it was legitimately conversion therapy. I'm like, ugh, dude, that's sucky. And then afterwards, she's just kind of like trying to, like, you know, Cristobal's kind of almost like numb out of his mind, and so she starts dancing and she's like touching her chest. I don't know whether it's like mi corazón, like, touch my heart, like, this is my heart, you're my heart, I love you. And Hank ends up killing both of them and ends up saving Cristobal and hugs him, and Cristobal just like weakly hugs him back. And I don't know whether Hank just feels like, because I think like Hank in that moment, you know, it's like, wow, the power of love, you know? But I don't know if Cristobal will ever be the same. Like, who knows, like, how much damage was there? It could be irreparable, like, irreversible is what I'm trying to say, sorry. It might be irreversible damage. We don't know. Plus, let's not forget, he has 2 kids too, so that leaves some kids around wanting revenge for their grandfather, for their mother. That could be a whole shit show within itself. Without Elena, they might not come after Hank and Cristobal. Would they go back to LA? Would they run to some other country? Because that was kind of Barry's plan with him and Sally, but we'll see. But this was a wild-ass season finale. I wasn't expecting all of this, so especially Barry getting arrested. That was interesting. Now my thought was, because earlier I referenced, you know, Fuchs in prison. Him and Barry are probably going to end up in the same jail if it goes that far. That Barry probably has an opportunity. It's like, oh, cool, you set everything in motion. This is your fault. I'm going to kill you, Fuchs. Or Fuchs is going to be in a situation where he's going to gain a reputation and they're like, oh, I'm the Raven. Haha, I'm the Raven. I'm so awesome. And then he gets enough backing so that he could have, like, a support in prison. And he's going to use those people to try and kill Barry. So that's my thought process. I doubt Barry's going to be able to kill Fuchs. He's going to try, but it's not going to work out. Once again, that all depends on if it goes that far, which it seems super likely that he'll end up in jail. But who knows if they'll... Because he might be already full-on in prison. At least maybe awaiting trial. Who knows, like, what's going to happen with, like, Barry's circumstances. I don't know the whole ins and outs of, like, the legal process of when you get arrested, like, when you go to jail versus, like, when you go to straight-up prison. You know, so we'll see how things kind of play out from there. But, you know... Once again, like, what's going to happen with Sally? It's going to be interesting to see everything with Jean. Like, are we going to pick up immediately with after this finale, or are we going to end up? Like, time skipping a little bit? I'm very, very interested to see where all this is going to take us. As I was talking a little earlier about next season, because the show is coming back for a 4th season. I think Bill Hader's talked about it. I've heard people say this, and I think there was like a Variety interview where he talked about the fact is he's directing every episode next season, which is going to be wild. Like, I feel like his episodes are the ones that definitely stand out like the most, which, I mean, like, this show in general is just so beautifully crafted, acted, written, and directed. Like, once again, like, I'm not the person who always pays attention to that. If I enjoy something, I just enjoy it, but, like, I feel like his episodes tend to be, like, extra fucking wild, with just, like, the nature of everything that goes down in them, like, those ones that he, in particular, directs. But, so, I'm so curious to see what the hell next season's like. Where do we go from here? And, you know, Barry, you know, he hasn't really kind of put a lot of acting stuff aside this season, just because of everything going, like, him spiraling this season. So I'm curious to see, you know, once again, what his life like. I get the feeling like he's not going to stay in prison the entire season. Maybe he will, for all we know. I doubt it's going to be an Oz situation, but maybe pretty damn close. What's going to happen with NoHo Hank? So many threads. I'm very, very interested to see where it all ends up taking us going forward next season. Because I love that, Eric and Jermaine they went, where was it? They left to go, like, take their act on the road or something like that. So it'd be funny if they come back and have no, like, yeah, Barry is out and he's back home and they're like, hey, Barry, what's going on since we've been gone? Like, it'd be funny if, like, they didn't come back until the end of next season and then all of a sudden they're like, Barry got released and they're back home and Barry's back home and they have no idea what the fuck happened while they're going. I think that'd be kind of funny if something like that happened. So, like I said, we shall see where next season takes us. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.